First of all, you're gonna need some context. I'm a park ranger at a national park on a small island nation in the Caribbean. If you never heard of it, I don't blame you. We're a small island about 19 miles long off the coast of Venezuela. The park I work at has at least 8 kilometers of coastline, but you can't swim on most of it. Despite the signs and warnings, that usually doesn't stop people from entering the water. Some end up fine. Some end up injured, and some we just never find. And when we do find them, we just end up with more questions than answers. Unless you're living under a rock, you probably know of the economic crisis in Venezuela, with the crisis getting worse by the day and the tightening of immigration laws on the borders of Colombia, Brazil, and French Guiana. Many end up trying to cross to the neighboring and more prosperous island nations. As you can imagine, not all of them make it. And it's guys like me who ends up finding them. I remember one day in particular, it was my second month working at the park, and I was sent on patrol duty in order to monitor the coast. Now, during patrols, we park our vehicles and check the beaches on foot for plastic, sea turtle nets, and, well, anything out of the ordinary. I was on my way to the first cove, and as I got close to the beach, I see something. A small, yellow boat. I immediately stopped the car and pulled out my binoculars. I didn't know if whoever was using the boats was armed or not, so I observed from distance. Once I deduced that the craft was abandoned, I made my way to the beach. I informed my superiors, and they later called the police and Coast Guard. Judging by the supplies in the boat, it looked like it was carrying 7 people, one of them possibly piloting the boat. Empty and full water bottles, life vests, soggy bread, things that we would normally find. The cause of this beaching was easy to see. The engine's propeller were completely destroyed, but it didn't look like it had hit a reef. Even if it were the case, there would have been something left to the propellers. But no, the bottom part of the engine had been completely ripped off. Another thing that stuck out to me was the complete lack of footprints. People don't just waltz on the beach and disappear into the night. They leave something behind. It didn't rain the night before and there wasn't any wind, so there should have been some prints left behind. By this time, the Coast Guard and police had arrived, and they were just as confused as I was. The engine had been destroyed, so this probably happened at sea, with no engine to propel them and no steering to guide them. They were dead in the water, so the currents probably brought the boat in. So what happened to the people? Also, on the bottom of the boat, we noticed there were scratch marks. We thought nothing of it, since we thought the boat probably hit a reef before it got on the beach. But some of them looked too deep and too straight, as if someone tried to carve it with a long, sharp knife. I was making a statement to one of the officers when I got called over by one of the Coast Guard guys. He sounded pretty upset.
Hey kid, you and that cop might want to take a look at this.
Me and the cop think nothing of it, so we walk on over to the boat where the Coast Guard guy was standing.
You guys see anything out of the ordinary?
We both scan the boat, and we don't see anything out of the ordinary. It looks like an empty boat, sir, I said, not really knowing what he was getting at.
Look closer,
he said. So we both lean in, and we see what he's talking about, and I don't believe it. There, running to the edge of the boat, were 4 scratch marks, and at the end of each one was a broken, bloody fingernail. I was bewildered. 4 bloody and broken fingernails. Somebody was dragged off the boat? I said.
Well, it looks like it,
said the Coast Guard guy. I looked straight at him. Why was he being so nonchalant about this? Wait, have you seen this before? He didn't even look at me.
We don't know what happened, but whatever happened is none of your concern. We're taking over.
I look around. My superiors give me this stare, as in to say, don't say anything. So I shut my mouth and head back to my car and went on with my day. I am the main keeper and partial owner of a small cemetery on the East Coast. My job is to make sure that things go smoothly. I'm in charge of everything from burials and arrangements to maintaining the grounds and sometimes even sales, caskets, and such. Although I am encouraged to upsell as much as possible, I never do. It doesn't seem right to try to get every last penny out of someone who's just lost a loved one. And, after all, it's just a box. It being prettier than the others isn't really of the utmost importance. Last time I checked, the dead don't care about fashion. I just hope they're staying dead. This week, I drew the short straw and had to work the 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift. We usually have a security guard, but he called in due to a family emergency. There had been some strange happenings occurring on site recently, and we all thought that a group of local kids might be vandalizing the property at night. I set up in the main office, which was located in the dead center of our 40.6 acres of property. There was an old VCR in the lounge that had been there for years. When I pressed play, I was surprised to see Abbott and Callisto meet Frankenstein in old-fashioned lettering. Frankenstein was just about to grab the main character when I heard a sound that sounded like a small explosion outside, and then another, and another. Grabbing my flashlight, I wondered if it was the local kids that had broken in and set off some unusual fireworks from the 4th of July. The idea of calling the cops immediately passed through my mind, but I thought better of it. If they didn't know anyone was there besides them, perhaps I could even give them a scare. Liking that idea, I shut the flashlight off and crept out the back entrance. Quickly running across the edge of the cemetery, my body was now concealed in the thick shadows as I made my way closer to the explosions. There was a 4th and then 5th boom. And then silence. Suddenly I saw the outline of 5 figures standing together around the water of a large pond we maintained. Gotcha, I thought, a wide smile spreading across my face. Thinking over the best way to scare them off, I decided on the old police routine. Running over behind the largest gravestone in sight, I slid down and realized that it was now only 20 or so feet away. I was filled with a mixture of excitement and nervousness, and for a moment, I thought better of the whole plan. But the excitement won out.
Freeze, you sons of bitches! It's the police!
I yelled, running out towards them and making as much noise as possible. Now the thought never occurred to me that they might actually freeze, and as I made my way closer, fear took over. The 5 figures hadn't even flinched at my screaming. In fact, they weren't even moving at all. My running slowed to a crawl as I now only stood 6 or 7 feet away. A few moments of silence passed by, and still the figures didn't move. I took one step closer and turned on my flashlight. It flickered for a moment and then held heavy on the backs of the 5 individuals. And then it hit me. They weren't kids. They were adults, and they were dressed as they had been buried. I even recognized some of them. There was a tall man of 50 that had suffered a heart attack just days ago. And there was a woman standing at the edge that had been 93 years old. I remember because the obituary said that she had died on the very day of her birthday. Fear now was indeed taking over. I forced myself to say the only thing that would pop into my head. Hello? They showed no sign of having noticed me, and only stood together staring into the dark water of the pond. I ran back into the office and called 911. Even in my shocked state, I was aware enough to realize that explaining that the dead had risen from the graves probably wouldn't be the best idea. I told the operator that a few adults had broken into the cemetery. Within 15 minutes, a single police car arrived, and 2 young men stepped out of the vehicle. They drove around for a short while, and then walked the rest of the hills on foot. Finding nothing, of course. When they did arrive back at the main office, they explained that there was no trace of anyone. They did, however, admit seeing more than one trail of dirt leading down to the pond. The next morning, I started to tell the other workers about what I had seen, and then thought better of it. Seeing 5 recently dead figures staring at their reflections in the middle of the night, I'll keep that to myself. I've thought of something better. I work the night shift again tonight. I'm going to grab a shovel and see for myself if those 5 are still where they should be. It's funny to me how you've never noticed me. I'm always there, you know. When you go to your classes, on your study breaks, when you're eating cereal for dinner. Always, I see you. You first caught my attention when you were out for a night with your friends. You looked so uncomfortable. I could see you smiling, drinking, laughing with the rest of them, but it was forced. You wanted to be there, sure, to be a part of something, and yet at the same time, being at home alone was also an appealing prospect to you. To this day, I still suspect that you had turned down the invitation several times beforehand so that it had gotten to a point where making up another excuse would have seemed suspicious and possibly proved detrimental to your friendships. When you finally had enough of the interactions, you decided to call an Uber. A responsible choice. However, as you left the building, you were followed. By myself, of course, but also by another. A different man had been staring you down from across the room with such intent it's a wonder you didn't feel it. His intentions were to defile you, and he came quite close to grabbing you as you left. But I pulled him back into the shadows where he'd become acquainted very closely to the ground instead. From that day on, I have followed you. I like to think I'm protecting you. We have a lot in common, you know. I think you'll really enjoy living with me. We like the same music, the same shows, and I like cats as well. Plus, if a spider gets in the house, I'll get it out for you. They don't really worry me, but I know you don't like them. Really, we're perfect for each other. Sometimes I follow you through crowds or as you do your shopping. You really need to eat better, just by the way. And still, you've never noticed me. Though I'd like to believe that surely I'm a little familiar to you by now. A face that you don't know exactly, but one that you may recognize if you would only look at me. I mean, at some points, you have looked right at me, sending a rush of adrenaline through me. There was even one time where you and I made eye contact. Do you remember? It was brief, just for a second. You smiled politely and continued about your business just like a perfect angel. It's okay if you don't remember. I'm sure you have that kind of interaction a lot. I've noticed a lot of people staring at you. Maybe it's just your clothing choice or something. Either way, I can't blame them. After observing for some time from afar, I got impatient to know what your indoor habits were. Normally, as soon as you closed the curtains, I was locked out for the night. And so, I came up with a solution. I waited one day until you and your roommates left, and then I broke in. Well, not broke in. I picked the back lock and let myself in. No damage caused. It's honestly very easy if you know what you're doing. Just ask a locksmith. Once inside, I took my time to familiarize myself. Your place is okay. You'll like mine better. And I fed your cat too while I was there. Then I found your laptop. I didn't need to know the password. I simply rebooted it in safety mode and uploaded the spy software to it so that when you opened it, I can watch what you're doing. Some of the sites you visit have been fascinating. In addition, I also took the time to set up some nano cameras. There's one in the vent in your bathroom, another hidden on the mess on top of your refrigerator, and a final one in your bedroom. Though, I won't say where exactly. Since then, I've found watching you has consumed my very existence. I no longer need to follow you in public. After all, you connected your phone to your laptop, and my software uploaded itself to there too. So even when you're out, I can still see you. The thought of you is driving me crazy. I can't stand it. The more I know about you, the more I'm convinced we're perfect. You should belong to me. Observing from afar isn't working for me anymore. I just want you to be mine. I'm writing this to you now because I want to give you a chance to reject my advances. Consider this a game between the two of us. If you make it impossible for me to get to you, when I'll be forced to leave you be. However, if I'm granted the chance to take you for my own, I will. In such a case, I would suggest you make preparations before we leave. It's a long way away that we're going. You probably won't ever see your friends or family again. Not that that's such a bad thing, though, right? I know the websites you browse, so I know you'll read this. The only question is, what will you do now? Remember, I like a challenge.
For nearly 2 weeks now, I've been reviewing no sleep stories by various authors on my YouTube channel. I've been lucky enough to get requests from 26 people, so I have plenty of business lined up. Most people I've reviewed so far are amicable and satisfied with my work. I'm far from the best video editor in the world, and I think my reviews could use some work. As pleasant as it has been to correspond with most of the authors I'm reviewing, there is one specific author that I hope I will never hear from again. It happened a couple days ago, after I posted about my channel on nosleep for the second time. Again, I was flooded with a fair number of requests. It's gonna be a while before I have to go and ask for the next wave. Again, most people were happy to let me review their work, with some sending me links to multiple stories. And then there was that author. Hey, I saw you were wanting to review No Sleep stories, right? Here's one I think you'll really love. Thank you for noticing my post. I'd be glad to review your work. However, the link you sent me didn't work. I checked your profile, but it doesn't appear that you have anything posted. I searched for the title under your username, but I'm afraid I can't find it. I am interested, though. Thanks again for taking interest. Oh my goodness. I am so sorry. I can't believe I messed that up. Let me try again. I'm gonna send it to your email this time. I never gave out my email to this individual. Up until before I got their first message, I hadn't given out my email to anyone on here. Nevertheless, I decided to go and check. Sure enough, there was a new link there with the same title. I clicked it and the story appeared. However, I found that it did not take me to Reddit, but rather some site I'd never heard of. I had quite a number of other stories still waiting to be read, but I found myself intrigued by this mysterious one. That wasn't until I started actually reading it. The first couple of paragraphs were alright. The story seemed to be about someone dealing with a strange infection they'd gotten after falling onto some strange flowers in a forest. By the third paragraph, I noticed multiple spelling and grammatical errors. I'd noticed similar things in a handful of other stories I'd read, but this was over the top. Still, I was able to follow it. The narrator of the story seemed to become increasingly frantic. Eventually, there was no longer any spaces between words. I struggled to keep reading, knowing I should just dismiss the story and move on. However, I simply couldn't find myself pulling away from the absolute mess on my screen. This person seemed to be suffering from a severe and rapid case of leprosy after I checked up the conditions they described. Then the last 10 or so lines was just a repetition of, "What happened to their skin? What happened to their skin?" Then at the bottom of the page, there was a large photo. It looked like a person who had just been burned alive. I clicked out and chose not to reply to the email. After that, I went about my day and recorded my review of an actual story. It was around 1 in the morning when I felt a rash on my skin. I've noticed from time to time getting minor rashes on my skin after a meal, and they never turned out to be a big deal. I assumed the same this time. Half an hour later, the condition was much worse. I had noticed large bumps of various shapes all along my right arm. I assumed I must have been having an allergic reaction. It was a bit painful and fairly itchy. I remembered experiencing something similar when I was a kid. It went away after a few hours, not requiring any medical attention. I started contemplating what I'd eaten to cause this, and then I heard a voice. "Why did you ignore me?" The voice was a bit faint and sounded more like it was coming from a radio. Sometimes when I put my computer on sleep, it would come back on and unpause whatever I'd been watching. I went over to my computer, moving the mouse around for a bit. The screen came back on. I could hear more chatter as I checked the tabs that I left open. It wasn't coming from any of them. "What's wrong with your skin?" I leaned back in my seat when I heard the voice. Had someone hacked into my computer? Just then, an intense burning sensation came from my right arm. I looked at it and felt faint. My arm was almost entirely covered in magenta bubbles, which quickly turned to a purplish green. I went to reach from my phone before the feeling rushed along my back and over to my left arm. My hands couldn't move. I could feel that I was panicking now. Within seconds, the feeling came over the rest of my body. My vision blurred, and I began to hear eerie, distorted noises. I fell to the floor of my bedroom in terrible pain. It couldn't have been more than a minute later when I passed out. When I woke up, it was a little after noon. My skin was back to normal, and I felt surprisingly well rested. My computer kept making a notification sound over and over again. It kept saying I had a new comment on one of my videos. I was reluctant to click it. Each comment was being posted on a private video I'd posted 2 years ago, before actually trying to make my channel about something. After choosing to ignore it, my computer screen went black and started making a loud humming sound. Then about 10 seconds later, some words appeared on the screen. "Did you like it? Did you like it? Did you like it?" Over and over again. However, the original text included my first and last name, which I've omitted. This went on for 30 seconds before my computer suddenly turned to normal. Immediately after, I went into Reddit and blocked the user, and then blocked them from my email and YouTube channel. I went to the doctor afterwards and explained what I had experienced last night, minus the bizarre voice on my computer. After running a few tests, it appears I was fine aside from my bad cholesterol being a little high. Not sure if I'm going to continue reviewing stories for the time being. I'll post reviews of the ones I've already read, and then take a break. If I get back into it, I'm going to make sure they're actually posted on Reddit and have minimal spelling issues. Also, I don't think I'll be interacting with the blank accounts anymore.
As you may have expected, though probably not with particular correct pretense, the siege of Area 51 ended disastrously for everyone involved. How do I know? I was one of the deluded, though determined congregation that stormed the base. Our numbers were minuscule in comparison to those who had pledged their participation online. But still, we raided as a formidable army. Hundreds sprinted collectively in a kind of mutually shared mania. Our speeds, though impressive, did not surpass those of bullets. The guards were posted in a perimeter around the base befitting any other military establishment. They hadn't expected a serious effort, at least not one of our size. And when we approached, en masse, bored, inexperienced, and sun-fatigued soldiers snapped to delay attention as we beleaguered the compound. Some of us were immediately dispatched by on-site deterrents. Buried proximity sensors activated anti-personnel turrets loaded with non-lethal rounds. Bodies fell in clusters, and a sizable portion of our admittedly pitiful army immediately turned back towards their vehicles. Those of us that persisted, determined to uncover the secrets of that legendary base, continued the onslaught, armed with naught but our cameras, makeshift gadgets, and curiosity. I remember leaping over a fallen comrade, his eyes pouring tears as he dabbed delicately with a napkin at a large red mark on his forehead where he had been struck by one of the automated defense system's pellets. The group-borne energy was quickly depleted in the face of the base's efficient weaponry. By the time myself and others reached the actual fence that enclosed the base, the guards had already taken up a position of suppression, which would have easily been our doom, if some of us hadn't anticipated such a quick failure before we even had set foot on the actual grounds. No one had brought weapons, so as to avoid being charged with any major felonies, though we did equip ourselves with various devices which we believed to be intermissile to the human psyche. Every manner of hypnotic and hallucinogenic construction was employed, devices meant to stun, disorient, confuse, and befuddle, hastily prepared and not so expertly used. Most of the guards targeted merely laughed, while others seemed to succumb, albeit minimally, to the desired effects. However, this momentary lapse of concentration and formation was all we needed, and our sheer numbers collided with theirs to our favor. Upon breaching the perimeter fence, a great exultant roar could be heard as our forces tasted a small, yet totally unforeseen victory, and the guards who had been gatekeepers merely stood in disbelief. My group, comprised of those who sought answers for the Roswellian mysteries and hoped to capture images of the extra-mundane nature, entered a long, seemingly spacious building to the east of the compound. The building's construction suggested it was used as a hangar for aircraft, and I'm sure you can guess what sort of aircraft we expected to find. More guards were present there, though we dispatched them without issue using our hypnotic gadgetry. Inside, though indeed a hangar, we found only the regular, mundane aerial vehicles of Earthian design. We maintained radio contact with the other groups, and to our great disappointment, they reported similar failure in uncovering any extraterrestrial artifacts. Strangely, the group that believed the base housed non-alien yet equally preternatural objects or presences hadn't reported their findings. My group unanimously agreed that this was troubling due to that group containing the hardiest and most devoted of our congregation. We set out to find the silent detachment, a flame of interest reignited within us. By then, our numbers had dwindled to a fraction of what had first entered, most of them having been detained or slain by armed personnel who saw our ransacking and loitering troublesome enough to warrant serious retaliation. Gunfire was heard. Blood was smelled. Screams were unnervingly cut short all around us. My group came across a duo of rather trigger-happy guards who had just neutralized an entire gang of truth-seekers, and if it hadn't been for the sacrifice of one brave inquisitor, we all would have fallen. He charged the guards, tackling them to the ground, allowing us to escape into an unmarked building whose stairs led into the earth. Behind us, we heard struggling and then the report of a rifle. The building's stairs led down for a great distance, and though I was never particularly good with determining geographical scale, I'm at least certain our descent measured a mile, perhaps more. Concrete walls and stairs descended intermittently, the passageway illuminated only at intervals by simple bulbs that dangled from chains affixed to the ceiling. We grew wary despite the downward trek, and 2 members fell from exhaustion. When we turned to help them, they demanded that we continue on. Eventually, we arrived at a large metal door with a simple crank serving as a knob. I turned the crank and, after a strenuous effort, managed to open the door, which revealed a massive, dimly lit room whose walls were lined with humming machinery. I recognized none of the devices and terminals that littered the room, nor did my companions, and most of what we saw seemed to be of a technological order several years beyond anything of our time. The room, a gallery of super scientific design. In the center of the room was a raised, square, black pad about 12 by 12 feet high, slightly bigger than a bedroom, with a metal podium linked to machinery nearby. A sort of lamp hung over the platform, and a network of thick wiring and tubing led from the space into the unlit recesses of the room. Despite the ostensibly inert state of the machinery, we heard and felt a constant vibration emanate from the construction. A power of some kind that flowed to or from the weird platform. As we circled the thing, examining various aspects of it, which I've related here, we at one point heard gunfire from the stairway we had left, and subsequently the agonizing cry of our exhausted couple therein. Our awestruck examinations turned into panic and frantic searching as we looked for some matter of defense from the attackers or escape from the room. No doors could be found, and the only items capable of being weaponized were several steel chairs placed before the bizarre machinery. Doubting our success against military combatants, I decided to try to make use of the focal pad. I've seen enough science fiction media to speculate that its use was for a transportative nature. Intuition and common sense allowed me to activate the machine to some degree, and the pad's overhanging lamp glowed hotly above us. Still determined to fight off the guards with chairs, my companions gathered at the door and attempted to bar it with a chair leg, leaving me to operate the machine. After a series of button presses in no particular order, the pad began emitting a low yet powerful hum. The digital display on the podium began counting down from 30. A small screen to the left of this displayed a series of numbers which obviously pertained to date. And without needing a second of self-reassurance, I plotted the temporal location considerably before the current date. I practically leapt onto the pad, and just as I felt the vibrations and strange, inexpressible pulsations overcome my body, I saw the door defending group blown back by some explosive device. What happened next I can't accurately describe. There was a sensation of dematerialization and atomical destruction, and subsequent reformation, as if I was blasted into particles and my constituent debris remade elsewhere among a wholly different sphere of existence. I do not know if it was through time or reality I traveled, if my instantaneous voyage was one of chronological reversal, or if I had been admitted to a reality where the entity resembling myself had not yet embarked on that ill-fated assault. If this is truly my original world, and I've defied the once irreversible current of time, then I can only warn you all of what will happen if you attend that stupid, perilous storm. If the machine's purpose is of an arguably grander nature, and I've been cast into a mirror realm of my own, then my admonishment still stands. I'm not sure what to make of things. I feel as if I've merely been given a second chance in my own timeline. However, there are certain things which puzzled me about this place. Namely, how no one in this realm seems to have heard of the recently declassified lunar compound that our group planned to siege after Area 51, where the secrets of the extinct anti-human lizardmen are rumored to be kept. Hey, long-time lurker here, but I told a friend about this and he convinced me to share this as my first post. So, a little bit of background. I have this hunting club in Louisiana of around 2,000 acres of land, and I have hunted all my life. From walking back to my truck with the light on my phone because I forgot my headlight, surrounded by a pack of howling coyotes, to being attacked by cottonmouths and wild hogs, there isn't much in these woods that scares me anymore. But this unnerves me. Every year during squirrel season, I go to a location on the property called Fluker's Bluff, which is dense with oak trees for the squirrels, and has a few small graveyards that date back to the early 1800s. I know this area very well because it's also my go-to deer hunting spots, so I spend a lot of time there. I've noticed a trend now where the only times this ever occurs is during this time of year. I enter the bluff and wander aimlessly around, going deeper and deeper into the woods, keeping an eye out for any movement in the trees or a flicker of a tail. After a while, I come to a point where I have a choice. Ahead is a dense swamp of mud, grass, flooded forest, and cypress knees. Alternatively, I could turn left or right into the gullies. No matter my choice, the result is the same. Typically, I follow the gullies, which always meets with other gullies, but this is different. There's a place where these gullies meet in a perfect triangle. The triangle opening is fairly large, and the ground is entirely sand. Beach-like sand, with only a few small beech trees in the center. In the center, at the base of the tree, is a rock in the shape of a human skull. Every time have ever found this place, I never realize I have entered this opening until I have found myself directly in the center of it. It's like I'm on autopilot, and I have no idea how I got there or where it is in relation to any other landmark. I just somehow end up in the triangle every time. This is a common area where the members of my club hunt during squirrel season, so I decided to ask around. They have never seen it. So one year, my dad decided that because we normally hunt alone, and he missed the old days when I was little and we hunted together, that he wanted to tag along with me. We ended up in the triangle. I showed him the rock and told him that this is what I was talking about, and that I wasn't joking around. But when we returned back to camp, I brought it up, and he had no memory of this encounter. I picked up the rock and placed it in his hands. That seems like something that would be hard to forget, and yet he remembers nothing of it. I go again the next year with my cousin that I've hunted with for many years, but we got separated and I ended up in the triangle all the same. He ends up finding himself miles away from our four-wheeler on the other side of the forest off of our property, which is surrounded by barbed wire fences that he would have had to cross to get there. He knows that the fences mark the end of our property and would not normally cross it, but instead of turning around to the straight shot back to the four-wheeler, he ends up on the highway miles past the fence and had to hitchhike back to the four-wheeler hours later with no memory of crossing the fences. Something strange is going on in these woods, and I keep feeling myself drawn to the triangle. I need to get to the bottom of it. I need to find the skull. Its image is burning itself into my eyelids. I can hear it calling to me. I must find it again. I'm one of those people who likes to push things off until the last minute, even if it creates only more suffering for myself. It's a bad habit that I'm trying and failing to break myself from. The whole situation started a few days ago when my arm started to itch. No matter how much I scratched and scratched, it wouldn't go away. At first, I didn't think it was any cause of concern. I mean, who goes to the doctor for a little itch? I figured I was just having an allergic reaction to something. It's not unusual for something to trigger hives and the unbearable itching of a rash. I've always been sensitive to allergies, so I slapped some ointment over the spot and told myself that if it didn't go away in a few days, I would pay a visit to my doctor. Days rolled by and it only got worse. I was becoming irritable because it was driving me crazy. However, I still insisted on not going. I figured that there wasn't much that they could do for me anyways. On top of that, I was always busy, and since I hadn't been in any real pain, I figured that I could just wait. I was wrong. Eventually, my arm started to get a bit sore. It wasn't anything severe, but it was nothing like what I was used to when I would have a reaction. Still, I held out, and I did exactly what you're not supposed to do in that situation. I Googled my symptoms. After a bit of research, I determined that there was nothing more than me straining my muscle too much. I just vowed to relax more and stupidly left it alone again. Lo and behold, the more time that passed, the worse it got. I couldn't see a connection, but at this point, my family started to become concerned about my well-being. They suggested that I go to the doctor. I shut them down at saying that I was just getting a little sick and I would be fine. All the while, I continued to let myself suffer. Yesterday, the pain in my arm became so bad I couldn't move it. The itch was so deep, it felt like it was in my actual muscle. It was like my arm was having a spasm. I called out of work sick, and I had been laying on the couch in agony. I can feel something withering around in my muscle. It feels like needles are poking at it. The pain is enough to make me see stars, and the worst part of it all is, I have no idea what is causing it. It just won't stop. I'm really worried. My other arm has started to feel really itchy. To give details, I'm 16. I recently got my driver's license, so I thought it would be a good idea to take a road trip by myself to the family's cabin. I was wrong. It all started out normal. I arrived at the cabin and unpacked, made sure all the basic systems were functioning, and opened the curtains. All was normal. The beautiful frozen lake, the medium layer of snow, the tall trees swaying in the light breeze. I loved it there. I went about my day, eating, watching Netflix, visiting the second cabin on the property. I was told to clean it up a little and make sure there were no animals nesting there. So I did. And to no surprise, there were mice and such in the attic, but nothing more. Thank God. I felt pretty tired, so I dusted off one of the bedrooms on the main floor and took a nap. I only expected to sleep for an hour. I woke up to a sudden noise and realized that I had slept a lot longer. 3 hours had passed and it had turned dark. Now, I'm not as scared of the dark, but being alone in the forest in the dark scared me a little. I decided to head back to the main cabin to eat dinner. It was about 7 p.m., so everything was dark enough to need a flashlight. Luckily, I had my phone. I slipped on my shoes and coat, locked the doors, and turned on my flashlight app. I began to walk and look down at my phone. Occasionally, I wasn't worried about the animals or paranormal things because I had spent most summers up at the cabins. Suddenly, a branch fell off the tree, about 8 feet in front of me. I jerked my head around to see and find what caused it. Nothing. So I began to walk again, a little faster this time. I never looked away from in front of me. Now, about 10 meters from the cabin, I thought I had spotted a deer. So I turned and shined my flashlight in the general direction. It was no deer. It was... I don't know. It was like it changed shape every couple seconds. First humanoid, then bear-like, and then to a figure that looked as if it was shaded in. Just pure black. Blacker than anything I'd ever seen before. Then it made the most blood-curdling sound ever. The sound it made sent chills down my spine. It sounded like a screaming woman, but I was alone in the northern woods, where there was no people or bobcats live. Before I could take it all in, it made an impossibly large leap towards me, and there it was, standing a foot, towering over me. I'm about 5'9". This thing surely had about 3 feet more to my height. It just peered down at me. I noticed it had no visible eyes, nose, or mouth. They were all just protrusions or indents in the face of the figure. Its ears were completely gone too. Though the most frightening fact was that the face kept changing shape to whoever I thought of. It changed to my mom, dad, brother, girlfriend, teacher, in a matter of seconds. Then nothing. The whole forest went dark. Not like a normal forest, there was literally nothing there. No sounds, no trees, no dirt, no lake, nothing. Just pure black. And as soon as it had happened, it all stopped and returned to normal. I don't know what that thing was, or what it did, or what it wanted to do to me. All I know is that I will never go into the woods at night, and I will never go back to that cabin.
Hey, remember me? Who am I kidding? Of course you don't remember me. It's been years since we last saw each other, or at least when you last saw me. So, to refresh your memory, I'm the guy that sat next to you in English class. I dumped my stuff on a random table, and suddenly you sat down next to me. I probably turned as red as a tomato at that point. When Mrs. Jones said these would be our permanent seats for the rest of the year, I almost screamed of joy, but kept it in me. You were, and still are, gorgeous. You had a great personality. You were the one I wanted to spend my life with. You hardly talked to me, and I didn't have the courage to talk to you. You might remember asking me for a pencil and seeing me glow red and being unable to speak English. Good times. My friends used to tease me about you, and although I denied loving you, that only brought me closer to you. And I became a stalker. I used to watch you everywhere you went on school. And that's when I noticed it. Or rather, him. It was a nice Thursday evening when it happened. I had been sent out of the class by my chemistry teacher, Mr. Rogers, if I'm correct, for being absent-minded, and I had to sit at a table in the hallway to make some stupid worksheet. I had just begun when you came walking by. I turned around to look at you when something caught my eye. In the corner of the glass door of an empty classroom was a figure. It was a malt figure wearing a black AC/DC shirt, blue trousers, and bright white shoes. He looked about 2 or 3 years older than us, but every girl in our year would have called him handsome. He was just standing there, looking at you. You didn't notice and kept on talking with your friends. But I did. For the next few months, I saw him everywhere you went. He always wore the same clothes, and he always had the same look on his face. It wasn't love on his face. It was something else. Lust. Like he wanted you. Not for love, but for, well, something else. The next school year brought with it a tragedy. A girl who lived a few houses away from me had been murdered by a stalker. The police had failed to arrest him in time, and that was a fatal error. The stalker was never arrested, and all schools in the area taught kids about stalkers and how to prevent the stalking going too far. During this period, I became self-aware and stopped stalking you. But something was off. It was the story, coupled with the fact that you had a real stalker, that got me worried. Years went by without anything weird happening. And on the last day of school, I wrote you an anonymous love letter. You just laughed it off, and that broke my heart. But I figured that you were laughing because it was anonymous. I'd see you on my way to work sometimes, falling more in love with you every time you rode your bike past my old Sentra. So why am I writing this? Well, I thought it would be a good idea to give you a love letter at your doorstep. I parked my car on the other side of the street and started writing, when I noticed something. It was the same guy as on school many years ago, wearing the same AC/DC t-shirt and the look of lust on his face. He walked very slowly to your door. He stopped at your front door and didn't do anything. Suddenly I saw your front door moving like he was trying to get in. The weird thing was that your door didn't make any noise. I've already called the police, but I'm scared it's too late, so if you're reading this, get as far from your house as you can, because I don't want you to get hurt. I really hope you make it, and I hope to see you later. Bye. So many people may have seen the memes being posted about the Area 51 raid. Well, I thought it was all just memes and was all jokes, and since I run a meme page for fun, I posted some of those memes. I then got a direct message from an account with 0 followers and following 0 people, saying, quote, "I'm from the future. People go through with the raid and release creatures, information, and new weapons into the world." I didn't bother answering because he was probably some guy just trying to be funny. Then I got a phone call right after I had seen the message from an unknown caller. A deep voice that was 100% a voice modifier started talking and said,
"I'm not kidding. I'm a time traveler and I'm trying to warn everyone about this raid. Just listen to me."
I was freaked out at this point because I had no clue how he got my number, but I was confused on if it was even the same guy.
People don't just go marching into Area 51. They bring all sorts of weapons, guns, knives, baseball bats, you name it. They start attacking everyone at Area 51 and come out successful. They storm into the building and keep attacking everyone who stands in their way.
I tried to say something, but he stopped me.
Don't talk. There's not enough time. Just listen. They start going through the entire base, finding information like The government is rigged. Countries that have unknown resources underground that could be used for different things like weapons, buildings, or making humans evolve into a stronger species.
He told me that information is released about planets that have life on them. He told me about weapons that shoot lasers like video games and how people started to use them against guards. He said that there were different testing rooms where plants, animals, and even humans were being tested on. Then they made it to where they kept any creatures that aren't supposed to be on Earth. He began saying,
The creatures they found and released were locked up and hidden for a reason.
He said that all the creatures were on a certain level of danger. Level 1 was the lowest, and level 3 was the highest.
They started with the level 1 creatures, which were creatures like animals with 2 heads, or humans that were mutated and had wings or tails. Then they made it to the level 2 creatures, which were creatures that looked like something from another planet. Scaly skin, claws, wings, massive teeth. Some were still animals, but were bigger than they should be, and had sharp teeth. When they finally made it to the level 3 creatures, they found creatures that were almost like bats, but they were bigger and had no fur. These bat-like creatures had bones and ripped up military uniforms in their cell. Another creature was a skinny, white creature with black eyes. And when one of the people raiding looked through the glass to see it, and was staring at it, he started chanting satanic stuff and shot himself. At the end of all the creatures was a room with cameras and buttons to lock and unlock the doors. There was one button that would unlock or lock all of them at once, instead of one by one. One of the people raiding decided to press that button when no one else would, and he released all the creatures.
He said doors started opening, and all the creatures went wild and started to run and fly around the Area 51 base. Some were attacking each other.
The people raiding all ran through an emergency exit and found their way out of the base, where they were surrounded by more military waiting for them. They were gunned down when they tried to tell the military what happened. One of the walls was burst through when all the creatures escaped and ran different ways. The military tried to shoot them, but some creatures attacked. When they all attacked, the military's weapons weren't enough, and they were all wiped out by the level 3 creatures, and the raiders were killed in the mess too. Days after the raid, cities began getting attacked by different creatures and were all destroyed. The world becomes a playground for these creatures. I'm warning you now, so let others know that people go through with the raid.
He hung up the phone, and when I tried to call him back so I could ask questions, the phone number wasn't even a working number.
My mother was a horrifying person. Big Brother and I were always scared of her. She hated us. Her whole family. When Dad was around, she used to lie about us, say we stole and cheated. She smiled while he hit us. One day, they had a fight. Dad told us to go upstairs. Big Brother tried to ask a question, but Dad hit him over the head and yelled at him. Big Brother held my hand as we walked up. The last time I saw Dad, Mom was standing behind him with the most disturbing smile I'd ever seen on a human being. When morning came, Dad was gone. Mom didn't say anything and the basement was locked up now. Mom screeched when we tried to touch the handle.
Don't go into that room!
We didn't get any food that night. Mom spent all day scarfing down the food in the pantry, eating up everything. Big Brother made the first move. While Mom was eating, he pulled me aside. Kimmy, I need you to watch Mom for me. I'm going into the basement. She will kill you. Please don't go. Mom killed Dad. She probably hid Dad's body down there. If we can prove it, Mom will go away. I need to find Dad's body first. I stayed silent. He used a stolen key to sneak in while I waited outside. An hour later, he came back. He was silent. Did you find Dad? No. He pulled me into a corner. I found her body in the room. That woman is not our mother. We need to... Shh. I raised my finger to my lips. A pale head was staring at us from around the corner. A red, throbbing eye stared at us. Mommy will hear you. We went to bed hungry that night. I had nightmares of Mom's body in the basement being eaten by something. I woke up to excited breathing. Mommy was standing by my bed. I saw her jaw open wide and coming closer. She sunk her teeth into my face. I screamed and thrashed, but she wouldn't let go, biting deeper into my flesh. I could feel her licking my blood and exposed muscle. Someone roared, "Get away from my brother!" Big Brother kicked her off me. The thing reached for me again, but Big Brother got his scissors and rammed it into her stomach. Her mouth stretched into a scream as black blood oozed out. Big Brother pulled the scissors out and stabbed her over and over, till she fell to the floor, motionless. We hugged, crying. We started to get out of the room when he stopped and he stared at Mom's body, scissors in hand. He bent down and started to cut into her face. What are you doing? There's something under her face. He was right. As he cut into the cheek, I could see something hiding inside. He was halfway through her jaw, revealing worms, crawling faces, and insects under her skin. Her eyes opened.
What did you do to my face?
Big Brother tried to get away, but Mother grasped his hands, pulling his fingers towards her open maw. I stomped on her stomach, and she let out a horrible, inhuman sound as she screamed. Big Brother pulled his fingers free from the screaming monster. Run! Now! He grabbed my hand and pulled me out of the room. Behind us, Mother rose.
What did you do to my face? What did you do? What did you do?
She grabbed Big Brother's shirt and pulled him back into the room. I turned to help him, but he roared at me. Run, Kimmy! Keep running! I did. I kept running. The last time I saw Big Brother, Mom sunk her teeth into his face with the same disturbing smile. I ran into the woods. I was deep in the trees when I heard his voice again. Kimmy, she's got me. It was coming from behind me. Please help me. Please. She's eating me. Kimmy, help me. Please. I peeked over the trees. Mom was standing there. She was holding Big Brother's head. His jaws opened and closed, and Big Brother's voice came out. Come out, Kimmy. Please help me. Years ago, I was stationed at Area 51. I will not go into details about things. I signed a non-disclosure agreement when I first arrived. If they find out I leaked information, I could be locked up, or worse, for treason. So let me start by saying that all of you people looking to storm the gates are just plain stupid. I say this with your safety in mind. Keep in mind, 10 years ago, we used surveillance and equipment that's considered new technology by today's standards. So if you're dumb enough to try it, consider yourself warned. Come to the gate starting 500 plus yards out. There's a minefield that surrounds the entire encampment that are pressure sensitive. They are able to tell the difference between wildlife and intruders. Also, there are UAVs monitoring and providing air support from high in the sky. I don't know if you've heard about the Navy testing lasers as weapons. They've had them for at least 50 years and have perfected them to be one of the deadliest weapons in the arsenal. These lasers are mounted on these UAVs with pinpoint accuracy, slicing a target in half within a millisecond. And that was 10 years ago. I can imagine how much these things have evolved today. If you make it close enough to the gates, you will more than likely be mowed down by one of the many soldiers on patrol. There are easily half a battalion's worth there at all times. And let me tell you, they are hungry for someone dumb enough to try some stupid shit. To top it off, the fences have enough electricity running through it to power an entire country for the next 100 years for free. Good luck with that one. If, by the power of Christ, you breach the gates and take out all the soldiers on board, you now have to worry about the vaporizers. No, not those douchebag smoke devices you all like so much, but vaporizers that will turn a 300-pound man to dust in a matter of seconds. This I have personally seen when Corporal Benson decided he couldn't stay there anymore, wanting to leave any way possible, even if it meant killing his way out. His parents now believe he died in battle, blown apart by an IED with nothing left but a few pieces of skin and organs. He was a hero, that corporal. There is a lot of crazy shit that goes on that base that does not need to be in the public eye, for good reason. I have no shit witnessed reanimated corpses, not like what you see in the movies, but who knows what kind of tweaks they've done over the years. You might just be the cause of a global epidemic, the likes of the Black Plague. I am going to sleep now, because I will probably need my rest to run and hide for letting this information go. But hell, if I can save the lives of a few hundred people, and possibly humanity, it'll be worth it. Unless I somehow die in my sleep tonight. Good thing I sleep with my P250. Keep an eye out for me. You might see me in the news for falling asleep behind the wheel while driving down a highway. With that said, good night and Godspeed.